Living a healthy, balanced life is no small feat, especially when you're a mom. With meals to cook, laundry to load, work to do, and humans to raise, it can be easy to feel like we're in an on-again, off-again relationship with healthy living. But it doesn't have to feel this way. I believe living a healthy life has become way too complicated. What we need isn't a new plan or program telling us what to eat or how to live. We need simple, uncomplicated routines and information that's going to help us live our best, most beautiful life without rules and restrictions. Join me, Kristin Dovbniak, holistic health coach, certified intuitive eating counselor, and mama of two, for weekly conversations on what it means to live a healthy, balanced life, uncomplicate eating, and simplify in every area of mom life.
Cook what you love. Whatever food you actually like, focus on adapting that for safety. That's the real advice, because I don't know what you listening to. I don't know what you love. Maybe you love Indian food and you can't have legumes. Hot dog, is that hard, right? Because Indian food is packed with legumes. And so now you have to focus on creating flavors that are legume free and still within the Indian realm of food. Or maybe you love Mexican food and you're allergic to tomatoes. Maybe you love, traditional Chinese food and you can't have like fish and mushroom. Geez Louisa, that's hard. So I can't really give one meal per se, but the best advice is just cook what you love safely. If you can find ways to adapt, that's really the goal.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Healthy Balanced Mama podcast. I'm Kristin Dovbniak, your host, and I am so thrilled about today's guest interview. I feel like I say that every time, but I had so much fun talking to today's guest, and this interview was so incredibly helpful. I know so many of you are going to get so much out of this episode. Any of you who have children who have food allergies, intolerances, or sensitivities, or you might suspect that they do, maybe you're in the process of figuring out where some of their food reactions are coming from. Maybe you have a child who was newly diagnosed with an allergy or an intolerance or a sensitivity, and you're kind of lost and you're looking for advice. Maybe you're looking for new recipes or navigating how to figure out cooking and kitchen tools and cooking for family members with different allergies or different dietary restrictions or food preferences. There is so much in the world of food allergies. And today I have the expert on food allergies, the allergy chef herself, Kathlena. Kathlena has over 200 food allergies and intolerances, including most water. The members of her household also have food allergies and special diets, none of them the same. After being told she had 30 days to live, she made it her mission to help the food allergy community thrive. 3 years from her lowest point, she and her team have published cookbooks, started a bakery, done nationwide outreach, developed recipes and resources, and so much more. You can learn more at theallergychef.com. And today she is here with us sharing everything you need to know if you or your child has been newly diagnosed with a food allergy, how to cook for family members with different food allergies, how to know if foods are safe, and how to really dive into the world of food allergies. Even if you're feeling overwhelmed, she gives really good advice on how to deal with not just the physical organization of living with food allergies or living with family members with food allergies, but also the emotions around it. She shares her really vulnerable story of dealing with lots of food allergies and the physical and mental health struggles she had from all of these food reactions that she had for so many years, and how she's come through it with such a positive mindset. And the same thing for her kids, how she showed up for her kids and gave her kids such a full life, even though they all struggle with different levels of allergies and intolerances, and how she went about that. And this conversation is informative, it's inspiring, and it will definitely make you laugh. I know you're going to love this episode. So without further ado, here is my interview with Kathlena, the allergy chef. Hi, Kathlena. Welcome to the Healthy Balanced Mama podcast. I know we've already been talking for a few minutes, but I am so excited to have you on and have an awesome conversation with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to share info with all of your listeners and just help people.
Yes. Oh, I know you will too, especially our little conversation we had over the last few minutes. I know this is going to be a really important conversation. But before we jump in, because I do it with every guest, I love to do a fun little icebreaker. So what are you reading these days?
Believe it or not, I'm reading fan fiction, which I stumbled onto. I didn't even know that was like a thing. Okay, so what you have to know is I love reading. I love books.
Yeah.
But paper burns my fingers, right? And so I haven't been able to read physical books for more than 10 years without being in pain. Or unless I like wear gloves, and then like who wants to read in bed with gloves? It's kind of weird. It's like this whole thing. Or like I have to use like a ruler to move the pages, and then I gotta like hold it. It's a process. So I was doing some research for something I was thinking about writing, and then I stumbled into this thing, and I asked one of our kids, "Have you ever heard of this? It's called fan fiction." They were like, "Oh yeah." Like they were totally in the know, and I was like, oh, "Okay, I did not know this was a thing." And so
you're that old mom who had no idea.
Yeah, I had,
not calling you old, but I'm saying compared to our kids.
Oh, I know. No. It's true. Like, it's funny because, my degree is in like PR and marketing and internet technologies and all these things. And I hate the internet. So it's kind of funny because there's so much there I just don't know about anymore. And,
yes.
I hate the appity app things. And I'm like, I don't want this stuff. Just give me an old BlackBerry and I'm happy, and like, if I could just rewind us to like the olden days, I'd be good. But yeah, no, it's rather entertaining. And I'm, sometimes sitting there like, grammar checking people like, oh, you didn't mean to say that, or you didn't mean to say that. And it's just, sometimes it's entertaining. Sometimes I'm like, why am I reading this closed? Like I can't, but it's kept me
entertaining though. That feels a little bit maybe like self-care. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kept me entertained, and that's it. Purely.
I love it. I love that. I love these. I love this question just because it's always a little bit different. Some people are reading nonfiction. Some people are reading like really juicy fiction books, and sometimes it's fan fiction. So I absolutely love it.
Cool.
So I want to jump into your story because you have an incredibly fascinating story about how you came to have over 200 allergies, including most water. And you just, described paper as being one of them. Can you share your journey with us in a nut-free nutshell?
Yeah, in a nut-free nutshell, which, by the way, listeners, is the cutest thing ever. It's like so cute. In a nutshell, nut-free nutshell, I'd have to say I was born with part of it, which part I couldn't tell you. There are certain parts I could probably tell you, but I could never really say this percentage was this way, this percentage was acquired over time. I am a complex case. I am the exception to the rule, not the rule. Because what I was born with was not quick and obvious reactions. It was never diagnosed. It was always like Band-Aids. Well, there's this thing wrong with your kid, and there's this thing, and there's this thing. I suffered from a lot of problems. I have more than 250 different symptoms. Depends on what's been eaten and have what quantity. I had severe crippling suicidal depression. I wanted to jump off of a bridge every day for like 15 years, right? I grew up that way. I grew up just thinking death was like the coolest thing, and that was the way out, right? And then one day I woke up and I was like, oh, I don't want to jump off a bridge today. Is this what normal people feel like? Huh. Like it was actually a real trip for me. And it's directly linked to what's been eaten, because there was a day where, I'd finally gotten certain things out of my system, and all of a sudden I was driving and I'm like, I just want to ram my car into oncoming traffic and die. And that's when I was like, oh, I think I ate something. And that was like the connection point, and so I have a lot of symptoms. I'm a mimicker. I can mimic cancer, Job's disease, Raynaud's, common cold, flu, pink eye, anything and everything in between. So when I say I've walked a mile in your shoes, I literally have walked a mile in your shoes. It puts me in a very unique position where I see the Venn diagram of our community. Some people only see vegan or only see paleo or only see gluten-free or only see this one thing. It's like, no. When you're dealing with over 200 food allergies and food intolerances, you see it all. You literally see the entire gamut. And so it's put me in a position where, I am the allergy chef, right? I'm allergic to everything, but yet I still cook all this food for people. It's funny because we have over 500 recipes on our website, and I've never eaten them. I mean, I think I've eaten like maybe 10, but I have no idea what they taste like. It's all in my head. And so sometimes people joke and call me the Beethoven of the kitchen because I'm still composing, even though I don't know what I'm composing.
It's so cool though. As a chef, I think it is so cool
like
to be able to have something in your head and be able to make it happen and go, I have no idea how I did that, but I did it.
Yeah, it really is a party trick. And I do not hide this. I say it's a God-given gift because I literally woke up one day and could just cook. I could cook and bake. I went from 0 to hero, like overnight. No kidding. No training, no nothing. I mean, I recently did some certifications and I got like a degree in French pastry just because I wanted to shove it in people's faces and be like, you can have free from pastry. But that was only recently. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time and it's just a thing. And so, when you're told you have 30 days to live because your condition is so bad and you've gone through wasting and you've gone through all these things, it's like you wake up and you're like, I got to get everything in my head out of my head because there's so much here for people, and so we did like 6 cookbooks. We started a bakery and we did like a nationwide tour and we just try to help people because it's like, I see this huge gap. It's like you get a diagnosis and, you're told to avoid these foods but you're not told how. And in some cases, you're not even told what that means, right? If you are outside the top 8, top 9, top up to 14, depending on what country you're in, there's no real resource. And to make it worse, if you are allergy or intolerance plus special diet, so let's say you are nut-free paleo, good luck, egg-free paleo, soy-free vegan, gluten-free vegan, all you guys, nobody helps you, but I do, right? I came along and I said, every single one of these people is falling through the cracks. I'm going to literally seal up every crack. In fact, one of the coolest things ever, it's called the Advanced Recipe Search. I love talking about it. It's on our website. It's got over 85 filters and you can filter individual allergens, food families, food groups, and specialty diets as well. And then you can also put in like special requests, like I just want pizza or I just want pasta or I want it to be freezer friendly or budget friendly or whatever. No one else on the internet is doing this for people with food allergies and restricted diets, like anyone, right? We are generating this custom result just for you. And what's so cool is like, if one person in your house is like egg free and someone else is dairy free and someone else is this, and then you got this other person, right? Mixed allergy household, you literally plug them all in and the results are the greatest common denominator, right? Yeah. That doesn't exist anywhere. And I'm like, you did it. Like I spearheaded this. It's so cool. And I need everybody to see it because it's everything you wish you knew the day you were diagnosed. And I guess to me, that's the most important part of my story. It's, okay, I had all that stuff, right? I went through all that stuff. But the real story to me is I'm changing the world one bite at a time. I'm on a mission to literally change the world. It's like when I was a kid, I knew I was going to change the world. I was one of those kids, I'm a hyper overachiever by nature. And to me, it's like anything less than 1,000% is failure. So it's like I go all the way and I'm like, I'm going to fix all of this. Don't worry. Just give me a little time. Give me some funding and I'm going to change it all, because I think it's a basic right, like food, and like you and I were talking about, before, like reading labels and things like that. It's like the worst part is like, even with buying something at the grocery store, if you're in the 30% where you can't do shared equipment, that's not on the label. Processing aids aren't on the label. There are certain allergies, we were talking about corn, sometimes soy, depending on the person and depending on what kind of products you like to buy. Sunflower, believe it or not, are 3 of the hardest things to avoid because of how they're used in the food industry.
Yes. Yeah.
People don't realize it, right? But they are so hard to avoid. And like sugar, if you're allergic to cane sugar, that too. Ooh, that's and of those 4 things I just named, only one of them is deemed a top major allergen, right? So it's like companies don't, when it comes to major allergens, there are rules in place that you have to be able to track certain things. A consumer has to be able to get in touch with you and say, does it contain or did it ever come into contact with insert major allergen here? Everything else is fair game, And then we have the FDA loophole, right, with highly refined oils. But then we have their pandemic loophole where they allowed for, you could change your ingredients because of supply chain issues. And as long as you didn't do it within a certain scope, you didn't have to put it on the label. And so for people with severe food allergies, it was fascinating, for lack of a better word, how overnight myself and a couple of other leaders within the community, we all kind of scrambled and we were like, are you working on this project? Because guess what I just heard? And we need to figure out who's going to change and who's not. And we were able to start getting in touch with companies very quickly to say who's going to take advantage of this loophole and who's not. We need to know right now. And we had like a master list up within a week. And we were pointing everybody as much as possible to this list. Like, if you use these brands, keep using them. And if you don't, start using them, because we cannot confirm what other brands are going to be doing, or make sure you're calling, and that's the thing. Like, if you're in the 30%, maybe you're already in practice of doing all these calls and things like that. But if you're in the 70%, now you're affected too, right? You can't just pick up a label and read it and assume anymore. So, I guess that's the most important part. If you need to know anything about me, it's that I'm on a mission to change the world one bite at a time.
Mm. I love that so much. I love that. Like, the most important part of your story is that, or at least I think the most important part of your story is that you went through all of this crazy hardship, everything from physical to crazy mental health issues, and you turned all of that pain and you turned it into this really incredible purpose to help people. And it's like, I, as a food intolerance mom myself, and we talked before we, really officially started recording about my husband, who was diagnosed with a really severe food intolerance or food sensitivity, whatever you want to call it. It's not anaphylactic, but it certainly affects him, when he was about 2 years old in the 80s. And it was so difficult then, and it's still difficult now. But there are, thankfully, very few out there, but you being one of the leaders, right? Resources available now for people whose kids are diagnosed with food allergies, if they have food allergies, or maybe they're adults and they're just starting to pinpoint different symptoms that they have that might be related to food. There really isn't enough out there. There is more than there was, but I know, just, talking to my mother-in-law for so many years, because my daughter was diagnosed with the same, really the same symptoms as my husband. And so we've been avoiding corn with her she's 8 now. So for basically 6 years. And it is so difficult, just like you said, it's in everything. And trying to explain that to people is so hard when she goes to, she's a Girl Scout and she can't have Girl Scout cookies for the most part. She'll have them now and again, but she reacts to them. And so, she goes to Girl Scouts and they're like, well, what snacks can she have? And we're like, well, she can't have maltodextrin. She can't have dextrose. She can't have all of these ingredients that are so commonly used in food processing. I know that, like, when my husband was young, he grew up in Ontario. And they lived right on the border of the US, and there was a certain type of cereal, I think it was Rice Chex, that they couldn't get in Canada. They would literally drive across the border. It wasn't that far. It was like 15 minutes, but they would literally drive across the border a couple times to be able to go and get corn-free cereal for him, because it wasn't available. Otherwise, he couldn't eat cereal at all. It's so
Can I tell you that's something I would do? I would literally do that. That's right,
you find something you like and that you can eat, right? Why not? I bet they would drive even further than that too, but it really is difficult. And I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, because I think those multi-allergy families are also really difficult as well. Or even more difficult as well, because you're like, okay, well, we're already dealing with, say, gluten-free, and then we also have egg-free, and really trying to figure that out. So you have 4 kids and a husband now. So you dealt with this all on your own. And most of your family also has their own allergies or food restrictions as well. So I want to just kind of dive right in and have you share, how do you manage all of this? How do you manage your own allergies in your kitchen with food allergies? Give me all of the advice.
Yeah, I've got to do that. Okay. Before I do that, though, because I had to write this down, I got to tell you something so funny. Well, it's not funny, but it is in a way, because your husband was in the 80s, right? And people didn't know. I had a massive allergic reaction in the 2000s. So we're talking 20 years later.
Yeah.
And it still was not diagnosed as a food allergy at that point. I basically had like a 36-hour seizure, and they were sending specialist after specialist. And what happened? I literally told everybody, I ate the food and this started. Not a single one of them said food allergy test. They ran every other test, but not a single one did a food allergy test. And that's 20 years post. You would have thought it'd be better by then, right? And the word allergy was not foreign, right? I had all these other environmental allergies. They knew, right? It was just, nobody said food allergy. And like you said, even now it's still a problem. Here we are, even 20 more years later, it's still happening. And, now I hear all these stories about medical gaslighting, and I'm like, hold on, doctors work for you. You can fire them, right? And people get kind of tripped out by that thought. They're like, you mean I can get a new doctor? I'm like, of course you can. If they're not working out for you, move on, right?
Someone who listens.
If they're belittling you or dismissing you and you've got all these problems, isn't their whole point to do no harm and to help you? If they're not doing that, what's the point? Like, you have better things to spend your money on. So, and corn is absolutely everywhere. It's even in maple syrup. People don't know this. It's used as a defoamer.
Really?
You can have corn, dairy, or sunflower. Those are the top 3 within the industry that are used. Even beeswax is in maple syrup, and it's never on the label. There's so much not on the label that it's insane. And it makes living with specific food allergies really difficult. And like you said, there's no resources for it. Like if you're in the top, like either top 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, depending on the country, there's resources. Like, please believe me, there are absolutely resources on that. It doesn't mean that the resources meet your needs, but it's not zero either. Once you have multiples, we find that like more than 3 majors or a lot of less commons, you're like a sitting duck and nobody's got anything. And that's really where we kind of change things up. I'd like to think of myself as a disruptor, right? I'm going to disrupt it all and change it. Okay. So how do we manage a mixed allergy household? So right now it's different than when the kids were little. So I'll focus on when the kids were little, because I think that's what's going to help your audience the most. But number one, I'm a hyper organized person by nature. So I never saw it as difficult. It was always easy for me. I know for a lot of people, this is actually one of the hardest things. So the best advice I can give is start with the greatest common denominator, right? If you have, for the sake of this example, we're going to have 3 kids with 3 different allergy sets. Everything you purchase has to meet all of their needs at once, okay? Whether it be a snack, a raw material, anything, everything, even if it's corn, right? Now, cost is involved. So you're going to have to sacrifice. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The more severe the allergy, the more expensive it is. It's an unfortunate truth, because you probably fall within the 30% who can't do shared equipment, which means now you're purchasing extra special food. And if you're dealing with corn, you're dealing with raw materials. So it's going to cost you a lot of time, and you're going to be making a lot of food from scratch. You're going to have to invest in an extra freezer. There are a lot of investments that you're going to have to make, a lot of special tools you're going to have to buy. But at no point in your child's life will you watch them thrive and say, I regret this. It's not going to happen. So it is a sacrifice that you need to make. It's interesting because for us, it's like, we never had like a new car really. I mean, I had a car payment for a while, but, it was like back in the day. It was an older car. Well, it wasn't old. I mean, I bought a new, but you get the idea. I think I was probably the only female you'd ever meet with 2 pairs of shoes. I literally had 2 pairs of sneakers and that was it. We didn't buy new clothes. It wasn't a thing. We didn't vacation really. We spearheaded everything into food. And interestingly, in our case, we were spending thousands of dollars a month on medical. And for 2 of our kids, I said, no, this is insanity, because there's something wrong here. There's a root cause. And like we were talking about before, getting to the root cause of things, and me loving science and being like a total nerd, I definitely wanted to get to the bottom of it. And we basically went from spending thousands on medical to thousands on food. And we never had to spend money on medical. The one example I give, and it always shocks people. In 1 year combined, the 4 kids had over, I think, 300 doctor's appointments, 400 doctor's appointments, some crazy number of doctor's appointments combined. And then the following year, after I switched everybody's food, 4. We went from hundreds to 4. Okay. And obviously no 2 people are the same. My story won't be your story, but we know that air, water, food, medicine absolutely has an impact on people. And it's something that we're not teaching in schools. We're not putting on the mainstream media. We're not talking about in, magazines and newspapers. We're just talking about like all this other stuff that kind of feels like noise sometimes. And we're not teaching people how to nourish themselves, right? There's so much more to food than just grabbing a pack of Oreo cookies and picking out in front of the TV, right? I'm not saying you can't have an Oreo. Please don't misread that. I think people should eat cake, cookies, and candy and ice cream. I just think you should do the better for you version, right? I don't think we should be polluting our bodies. I think that we should be nourishing them as much as we can, and, understanding root causes and how that all works. So how did we manage? I started with the greatest common denominator and worked my way back from there. Everything was color coded. So that the kids could have a form of independence. We had very strict rules in place. There wasn't a lot in our house that you could get in trouble for, but you would get in so much trouble if you took something from someone else's snack bin, or if you put something in their snack bin. Right? That was considered really bad. You could only give a snack you didn't want to an adult. So everything was color coded, had their names on it. Everybody had their own things, and it was very funny one day because our youngest, who does not have a diagnosed food allergy, but she definitely has something as a teenager that we have to deal with regularly. She says to her brothers, I wish I got special food like you guys. And all at once, they all said, no, we want to eat your food. It was so funny because she was so used to everything being special for them, right? And she wanted to be special too. I'm like, kid, if I got to deal with one more special kid, I'm going to lose my mind. So it's kind of funny. So it's been quite the journey. Obviously, we had to navigate class parties. I was a very involved class parent, very involved, and made sure that everything was peachy. I was the kind of parent who had teachers' cell phone numbers, and we would text each other and they would let me know if there was anything going on at school. We did not have a 504 plan because our kids were in private school, but it helped that their grandparents founded the school. So we were like in the good graces of all the teachers. And we kind of got what we wanted. It was nice. But, the school, I think in a way, the school sort of learned through us how to help other allergy families as well. So that was kind of cool as well.
Yeah.
But it's been quite the journey. And unfortunately, so they're not my biological children. I should say that because a lot of people, they often wonder. But their dad, he's allergic to coconut. Now, sometimes you'll hear, oh, you can't be allergic to coconut and tree nuts. Guess what he's allergic to? 2 things. You ready? Coconut and macadamia. That's it. Okay. So I like to tell people, please don't say that. No 2 people are the same, right? You can be allergic to anything in any combination. And so with him being allergic to coconut and kid 2 being allergic to dairy, like anaphylactic severe allergic to dairy, everything dairy free, especially back then, was all coconut based. Yeah. So if you can imagine trying to feed 2 people with essentially opposing allergies, 1 meal, hot freaking dog, man. It was so hard. I had to reinvent basically every wheel because I had 2 choices: cook everything twice or reinvent once. So I was like, I'm just going to reinvent this. This is crazy. And then of course, when you're in a mixed allergy household, you have to separate. And the number 1 piece of advice I can give you is non-stick remembers. Just remember that if nothing else. Non-stick things can hold on to food, even if it goes to the dishwasher. Technically, everything can hold on to the food. But non-stick cutting boards, those are the things you really have to look out for. Sponges, believe it or not, especially if you have by hands. Imagine this. Think of glitter, right? If you cover a dish in glitter and then grab your sponge it off, you have glitter on your sponge. And then if you take said glitter sponge and then sponge the thing without glitter, guess what's on the thing without glitter?
Yeah.
Glitter. Right? It's the best way to help people visualize. And so you have to separate. So in our kitchen, we had the largest cabinet, which was under the stove, had everything in red. We actually let the kids pick the color. Originally, it wasn't color coded, the cooking pans, but as they got older and they were old enough to really cook independently, one of the kids actually said, I'm afraid to cook in the kitchen. And I was like, how come? And they were like, I never know which pans to use. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because I'm hyper organized and I have a memory like no other. For me, it was easy. I knew what to take and what not to take. So from that moment, even though things were divided, we had a different cabinet for them. They still were afraid. So the kids got to choose. It also helped that our stove blew up. It was kind of funny, not funny. We were all scared to death. It was hilarious. It just went one day, the light just like superheated and the whole stove just went boom. And we were all like, oh my goodness. Like we were all scared, right? It's hilarious. So we had to get a new stove, which turns out it was induction. And so we had to buy new pans. So it worked out really well. And the kids picked red, means stop and think. So everything that's the greatest common denominator is red. Red pans, red pots. We take markers and we color code the cooking spoons in red. Like everything is red. Red colander, red lids, like everything is red. I kid you not. And then everybody else has like these random colors. It's kind of weird. It's like a cacophony. But it's a lot of organizing. We have a separate refrigerator for major allergens that stay outside of the main kitchen. We technically have like 3 kitchens. We have our main kitchen. We have what I call the front room kitchen, where there's like a fridge, more cooking appliances, a pantry. And then we have the outside kitchen for foods that I am airborne allergic to that have to be cooked outside, like pasta and things like that. And it's rice pasta. I'm severely anaphylactic, airborne allergic to rice.
Oh, wow.
But of course, for the greatest common denominator, rice pasta makes the most sense. So it's another one of those hoops that our family jumps through that not your family's going to have to jump through. But it's pretty crazy some days, and we've had to invest a lot of money in food. And, speaking of investment, for people listening with young children, one of the biggest tips I can give you, once you have the diagnosis, I want you to start a bank account. And you're going to put $20 a month into this bank account. And you're not going to touch it. And when your kid is 18 and they want to go off to university or they want to move out, maybe like at 20 or whatever, right? You're going to gift them every appliance that they need. Because believe it or not, $20 a month turns out to be a KitchenAid and a Nutrimilk and a Vitamix and every expensive appliance they won't be able to afford when they want to leave home. And maybe you've got other kids at home that need those appliances. So you literally can't afford to send off your appliances.
Yeah.
And it's something that's really overlooked in our community because it is expensive if you want to move out. Because it's not just moving out. It's how do I feed myself safely with nothing to start with?
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. $20 a month. And even if you can't do 20, do 10, because maybe you can get them at least mid-range quality appliances,
That's a great piece of advice. I love that. I'm gonna start that. I'm gonna start a fund for our
with corn. You have to with corn-free kids, make it $50 a month, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I want to ask you then your best advice for the mom who's listening, who maybe their kiddo just got diagnosed, maybe they're really young, or maybe they're even much older. What is your advice for kind of the newly diagnosed with food allergies, other than the $20 a month, which I think is a fantastic idea? Where do you recommend they start?
All right, 3 things. Number 1, I want you to feel sorry for yourself. I want you to actually grieve the loss. A lot of people don't talk about this, but whether you are the diagnosee or you are the parent, you've lost something important. We live in a culture, no matter what country you live in, every culture revolves around food and holidays and food. And, oh, somebody's born. Let's make food. Somebody died. Let's have food. Oh, we have this event. Let's bring food. Oh, we're getting together. Bring food. Like everything is about food. And now you're suddenly excluded from most of your culture, but no matter what your culture is, right? I need you to grieve that loss. Acknowledge it. Might take you a few days, right? Cry about it. Scream about it, right? Be mad. Go through the stages because it is a real, tangible loss. Your entire life is about to change. You not only got to change the way you live, but for some of you, you have to like literally throw out half your kitchen and start over, overnight. It's a big deal. Nobody talks about it, but it is a big deal. The next thing you're going to do, and this is specifically if you're the diagnosee, you're going to, whatever kind of, like most people are a sweet tooth. And the idea is that you're going to eat something sweet, even if it's as basic as a date. Because once you grieve the loss, even before you grieve the loss, the first thing everybody thinks of, and it's universal, I don't care what you're allergic to, even if it's just black pepper, the first thing you think about is everything you can't have. Yeah. Oh, I can't have, oh, what about, like they literally go through these lists of everything they can't have. So if you are a sweet person, you're going to eat something sweet, even if it's as simple as a date, because you're going to trigger this reaction in your brain to say, no, shut up, brain. I can still have. Check it out. I just ate this. It was sweet. It was great. In fact, I'm going to eat 5 more. And you're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to indulge in it. If you're a savory person, even if it's as simple as sprinkling Himalayan sea salt, which I kid you not tastes like popcorn on your tongue. It's bizarre. At least to me it does. At least what I think popcorn used to taste like. I don't know. You sprinkle it on and you feel like this little hit in your brain. That's what you're going to do. Because you need to tell yourself up front, this is not the end of the world, right? And what I want you to remember is that, and I know this sounds bizarre, but just hang on to me for just a minute. This is not hard. It's inconvenient. It's time consuming. It is not hard. If I gave you a 500-pound stone and told you to push it up a hill, that's hard. Hot dog, that's hard. Okay, it's going to roll back down some. You're going to scrape your knees. You're going to be kind of mad at me. It's hard. It's physically hard. Unless you're like one of those really cool bodybuilder dudes, in which case it's just practice. For the rest of us, it's hard. Inconvenient, absolutely. You got to read labels. You got to do these things. You got to do all these tasks, which, inherently are not difficult tasks, but they are time consuming. They are inconvenient. And if you mess up, it can cause harm. So there's like this stressor, right? Now, we use the word hard to describe it, but I like to help people shift their mindsets. I don't want you waking up thinking every day, my life is hard. I need you waking up every day saying, I can do this. It's not easy, but I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to make it happen. Because when you can do that, You find joy in your kitchen. You don't resent your diagnosis. We meet with so many people who end up resenting their children. And for those people, I have to say, you need therapy. Like, I can give you some tips right now, but I actually need you to get yourself in therapy right now for the sake of your child. And I know you're a good person. The fact that you're trying to work on it tells me you're a good person, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not judging you. The problem is your mindset. You're so hell bent on thinking, sorry if I said that word, but you're so bent on thinking this is so hard that you're now attaching those feelings to your child and you're resenting said child. And unfortunately, this happens with pretty much any kid with a diagnosis that's incredibly complex, right?
Yeah.
People start to resent that kid and that diagnosis. You can't. You've got to flip the switch and find the joy. You have to. This is their life. This is the rest of their life. And while they are a child under 10 who legitimately depend on you for every single meal, they need you on your A game. And you can't be on your A game if you're hating it, right?
Yeah.
We have to find a way to enjoy it. And that comes with flipping the switch. It comes with, having experiences with your kids. In fact, I just did an allergy seminar on our website about this, on how you can have fun with food with your children, playing dress up and pretending to be food critics and eating safe food and just comparing safe food and being like, are you tasting the hint of salt there? Oh, and you're teaching your kid like food language and you're just having fun, or having like tea parties with their safe food, or, teaching them how to bake and let them lick the spoon, and all these little experiences that you can give your child if you're not resenting them. If you're resenting them, you are in no shape or form mentally to provide them this experience. It'll be too hard for you, right? And so that's the thing about having to go through the process. Okay, I totally got off track. Step 3. There was actually 3 pieces of advice. Step 3 is to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get busy finding solutions. The solutions are not going to find themselves, like for you. The solutions are not going to fall out of the sky, right? It's not going to be like raining safe food. You're going to have to put work in. Remember, it's not hard, but it's inconvenient. But you're going to have to do a lot of work that you are probably not prepared to do. But the nice thing is there are resources now, right? I'm a resource. If you have nowhere else to start, go to theallergychef.com. There, I gave you a starting point, right? We're going to get you somewhere. And so that's it. It's that 1, 2, 3. Feel sorry for yourself and grieve the loss. Have something sweet or savory for people who need savory. And then pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get busy doing, because you are your child's sword and shield. And that's, I guess that's the other underlying piece of advice I have to give parents who don't have a food allergy. If you won't feed your child rat poison, please don't feed them what they're allergic to. Don't experiment on them. Wait for fully informed consent, because if your child cannot say these words back to you verbatim, my head still hurts from the food you gave me 4 hours ago, don't experiment on your child. Assume the diagnosis is true and make the sacrifices and work hard at keeping your kid at neutral and getting them to a point where they can thrive. Because when your child is not neutral, they will struggle, even if you don't see it. If they don't have quick and obvious reactions like I can't breathe, you're not seeing the digestive distress. You're not seeing the behavior disorders. You're not seeing the rage or the depression or all the other things that can come with food that no one tells you about. Yeah. I'm telling you, it happens. It's not talked about. I actually don't know why. Maybe I need to change that too. But it happens. So I need you to know there are things going on under the surface you don't see. And we don't want that happening to your child, because we don't want a misdiagnosis on top of all of this and your kid on some other weird pill that they actually don't need because of whatever, So go through the motions, do the things, and then get your kid involved, because they have to be involved for the rest of their life. So give them the joy that they need in that kitchen.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And it's so true that there are so many symptoms that we don't realize could be food. And that's where it's crazy. It's trippy that my 8-year-old now, the other day, she came home from Girl Scouts, and Girl Scouts keeps coming up. She loves Girl Scouts. But she came home and she was like, I want to go to bed. And normally we all sit down and have dinner together as a family. I had made one of her favorite dinners. We made a homemade cashew cream sauce with some chickpea pasta, all things that she could eat and she loves, and some roasted broccoli. And I'm like, this is your favorite thing. And she was like, no, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. And we're like, okay. So she went to bed. She woke up the next morning and I was like, what's going on? She's like, I had a headache. And I was like, oh, we're a little worried about her eyesight. I have glasses. I have since I was 8. And she has an appointment with the eye doctor. So we're taking care of it. But we're kind of wondering if it's because she's reading more, if she's having issues with her eyes. But we also realized she was like, well, I think I had some corn at Girl Scouts. I was like,
Yeah.
oh. And she's like,
I call them
yeah,
pass out
I didn't
naps.
really like check or anything. And I had hummus and pretzels. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And she, within a couple hours, and she recognized, she's like, I had a headache. I was tired. I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And it's crazy when they get to the age and they start to recognize it. And then I'm like, then I feel bad because I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize there were snacks. I should have sent you with something. Of course there are snacks. It's like dinner time when they have, but it's so interesting when they get to that age. But before they get to that age, like you said, you don't know necessarily that they're having these reactions. They can't tell you.
You've got the perfect example because, I unfortunately have had to become an advocate of children who are under the ages of 8 to 10. 8 to 10 is usually when they can really feel it and talk about it.
Yeah.
That's why I always just lean towards the age of 10. But that's when they can say, this is hurting me. And sometimes they're not even able to say it's because of the food, but they can at least tell you that they're having the symptoms so that you as the adult can start making the connections and keep the food journal. What you're describing, I call them pass out naps. I actually suffer from this a lot. Sometimes it's like you're sitting there and within 5 minutes of eating, it's like, I cannot keep my eyes open. If I don't lay down, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad it is. And I have to go to sleep. And it makes functioning really difficult because like I'll suddenly be asleep from, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then of course you can't sleep at night. So you're up until like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then you're like, oh, I should probably get some work done and be productive. So you're like typing out blog posts at 2 a.m. Right. It's bizarre. And so, but some people as adults don't recognize these symptoms in their children.
Mm-hmm.
They don't recognize my kid just randomly needed a nap and they don't see the connection. Or my kid is having a meltdown. They don't see the connection. Yeah. I do. I was actually with someone once and they fed their kid something and then their kid started having a meltdown. And I'm like, you said they were allergic to corn, right? And they were like, yeah. And they were kind of new to it. And I'm like, that lollipop probably has corn in it. And the parent was like, I didn't know. And after that, they got back to me later and they were like, I started noticing more, food connections to meltdowns.
Yeah.
I'm like, there you go. And I try not to overstep and tell people how to parent their kids. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not going to let a 2-year-old suffer because a parent doesn't see the connection,
you're just,
I'll say it as nicely as I can, but
yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think I realized. No, I definitely didn't realize. So I have struggled with digestive issues pretty much my entire life since I was about my older daughter's age. And so I have dealt with, food sensitivities on and off personally, but I don't think I realized the neurobehavioral connection to food until my mother-in-law started describing my husband's first symptoms with corn. They were neurobehavioral as well as some digestive type stuff, but primarily neurobehavioral when he was really young. And then my daughter started experiencing the same thing. And it's when you start making that connection, it's absolutely insane because you're like, you can pinpoint it to the moment she ate the food and then how much longer after. And I actually have the same, like the pass out reaction you called it to potatoes. I can't eat white potatoes. It's like an hour-ish after. And all of a sudden, the first time it ever happened, it freaked me out because I was driving and I had to pull over because I felt like I was going to pass out. And I I was like shaking. I called my dad. I was like, I think I need you to come and pick me up because I'm like, I can't, it's insane. And so since then, I mean, I will eat them on a very rare occasion, but I don't eat, and it's only if somebody else is driving or whatever. Because thankfully it's not anaphylactic, but I've learned too. I'm like, I don't even eat them really occasionally anymore.
So here's the interesting thing about that though. A pass out nap, as I call it, combined with something else usually technically counts as anaphylaxis.
Yeah, because anaphylaxis
because you're essentially because it's within the 4-hour window.
Yeah.
And you're essentially passing out.
Yeah.
If it's combined with another major organ system, so eyes, ENT, GI tract, stomach, etc.
Yeah.
And it's technically anaphylaxis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't even think of it like that because I think of anaphylaxis as respiratory, but I did know that it's two.
Yeah. Most people think
organ systems.
Is EpiPen, I can't breathe. Yeah. Anaphylaxis technically is defined as a major reaction involving either essentially a fatality type reaction with one system. So that's where the respiratory comes in. Because if you can't breathe and that's the only symptom, you still can't breathe. And that's fatal. But then if it's non-fatal anaphylaxis, essentially 2 major organ systems or more involved. usually with a major type of reaction. So it could be hives all over the body and your eyes swelling. Okay. That's two major symptoms. It's not fatal, but it's two major symptoms. So it's considered anaphylaxis. So essentially in the 4-hour window, a pass out nap plus something else, you're essentially, it's a crossover between lethargy and passing out. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But you're passing out.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And I know.
Over the years, it was about like 4 years ago that it first happened. And well, yeah, I think I'm trying to think about how old my kids are and when it happened. And, for like 2 straight years, I had none because I was like, that was terrifying. I'm never doing that again. And I recognized it was the food immediately because it was the only thing that's different. I don't really like potatoes, thankfully. So I didn't, and I'm fine with sweet potatoes, but white potatoes, I can't. And since then, I'll have them like twice a year. And I'm so far, I still feel terrible, but I've eaten them. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to rethink that. Cause I'm like, if it is technically anaphylaxis, if I have those, this is not good for my body.
Two systems, right? Like the pass out nap on its own, one could argue is intolerance.
Yes.
Yeah. But because you're in the 4-hour window, that's where it's hard, right? Because we define food allergy as from the moment of contact to 4 hours, the symptoms within there is usually defined as allergy. Outside the 4-hour window, we usually define it as intolerance. However, depending on the reaction within the 4-hour window, it's sometimes defined as intolerance. And it has to do with, so we know IgE, right? IgE mediated food allergies. Those are the ones that can cause anaphylaxis. There's actually 5 Igs. So depending on which Ig has been activated, that determines allergy versus intolerance. Now I'm jumping into like the science of it all. And then you have complex cases where it's like mast cell, where you essentially, for lack of a better word, you're mimicking anaphylaxis, but it's not. Like it is an allergy, but it's not. It's more histamine based. And there's more science behind mast cell, and you can still need an EpiPen. But the hallmark of mast cell is that you can eat a food safely on Monday, and by Friday, you're essentially fully allergic to it. It's crazy. With mast cell, you are basically a high rolling gambler every day. It's insanity. It's
crazy.
Never push it on someone. Now, there's more treatment for mast cell than there is for other stuff because they can put you on blockers and try to bring down the body's response. And then from there, a lot of people try to work on root causes because most people are not born with mast cell. It is so rare to be born with it or have it as a child. It's usually developed over time. And so there's usually like a root cause. Believe it or not, for a lot of people, it's like mold, different things like that. Yeah. So it's like you have to like completely shift your lifestyle. And then your mast cell symptoms start to wane and you can sort of get back to semi-normal living. And some people see up to 80% improvement just on the blockers. And then they do root cause improvement and they're like a whole new person. But it's wild. And I like to see food allergy, I like to say restricted diet, to be quite honest with you, because it's more than just food allergy at this point. And because I have so many symptoms and so many foods I have to avoid and I can't drink water, it's like, I literally see us all. And so I just see like this tree, right? And the core of the tree is the word restricted diet. And then we have all these branches, whether it be food allergy, food intolerance, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, a sugar intolerance, all these other conditions, right? We have special diets like paleo and keto that were really designed for medical treatment originally. To treat certain medical conditions. And that is still a dietary restriction, right? It's a restricted diet due to a medical need. So it's like, I see us all in one giant boat. And the unfortunate thing about our communities is a lot of people don't. They're like, well, I'm paleo. Well, I'm vegan. Well, I'm this. And I'm like, you're all like restricted diets, right? But,
It's hard for everyone just in different ways, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I think this is this is such a great conversation to bring to light there's so many different reactions that your kids might be experiencing. It's always worth exploring or yourself. I shouldn't just say your kids. We're kind of talking about families here, but
I have to interject and say this, right? Because you said something so important, but I need people listening to know this as well. Previous reactions do not predict future reactions. If you have a child with any form of allergy reaction, do not continue to feed them the food, period. Hard stop, no buts, no nothing. Because just because it wasn't anaphylaxis today does not mean or guarantee or promise it won't be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can we usually sort of get an idea of what a reaction looks like? Absolutely. If your child always has skin reactions, we can generally guess that your child will have a skin reaction, but that does not take anaphylaxis off the table. I need people listening to know that.
Yeah.
I'm the perfect example. I've developed airborne allergic reactions that are, pushing into the severe levels to different things over time. It did not start out that way.
Yeah.
Previous reactions do not determine future ones. Sorry, I had to jump in and say that because it's like,
no, I appreciate
people
that.
don't know that.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, well, it's not a big deal. And then one day it really is. And they're like, what happened? Like, well, you essentially primed the body to get worse and worse and worse.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that is so important. And it's making me rethink too. I mean, even though I'm like, oh, I mean, I can have
maybe you should stop eating potatoes. I'm thinking about these potatoes and I'm kind of going, like,
I promise I will stop.
Yeah, like at first potatoes. I wasn't thinking it, but now I'm like, I think she should stop eating those potatoes.
I need to stop eating potatoes. Yeah. I mean, it's so rare for me that I do, but I'm like, no, it does make me think. And it does remind me that for myself or for other women listening or for kids, it can be worse the next time. And gosh, I can't imagine what would be worse than me almost passing out while I'm driving. So, I mean, that in and of itself is terrible. And so, yeah, I think it is important that we're having this conversation because even though the solution isn't for most people with food allergies, sensitivities, intolerances, whatever level you're at, for the most part, it's not as easy as, maybe even with mast cell, you can take blockers, there's some sort of solution for people with allergies. It's avoiding it. And that's the hardest part is what we're talking about is
exactly. Even if you do OIT, which is oral immunotherapy, even if you pass OIT, they don't say you're cured. They say you're in remission. There's an important distinction there. Because there was a child recently who died. She had passed OIT and then lost the tolerance. Literally, she was doing the maintenance doses, woke up, lost tolerance, and died. And this is not an uncommon story within OIT. There are fully grown adults sharing their stories online, saying, "I woke up one day, I lost tolerance. It can happen today." And that's not to say you shouldn't explore OIT, especially if I see a lot of parents who their child has anaphylaxis and they're so afraid of their child dying from the smallest amount of contact. And so to them, OIT is a way to say, if they get a tiny amount of exposure, at least I know they won't die. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's admirable. I think it's a very scary choice to make. And it's a very difficult program to go through. It's anxiety inducing to the max. Right. Mm-hmm. And so they're doing that in hopes to eliminate the chance of death. And I totally get it. But always remember, you still have to carry the EpiPen. You're only in remission until you're not. And that doesn't mean that'll happen to you, but it also means it doesn't happen to you. So it's a 50-50. It really is a gamble if you continue to try to expose yourself to the foods where the only cure is 100% avoidance.
Yeah. Okay. This is a good segue then. How do you know what foods are safe to eat? And what are your best tips for finding safe foods? I know you have an incredible resource for recipes, but in terms of shopping at the grocery store, how do you know? And I guess give me your best tips for the mom who does have a kid with a food allergy or they have them.
It's a few things. Number one, you have to know which group you're in, right? There's the 30% group and the 70% group. We've polled a lot of people. This is not an official number. I'm going to tell you this, number one. I cannot back this up with any poll of more than a couple thousand people. But every time I do it, I get the same percentages, roughly. So I say 30 and 70. About 30% of people with food allergies cannot eat food made on shared equipment with what they're allergic to. Mm-hmm. The other 70%, they're fine. Okay. So you have to know which group you're in. How do you know which group you're in? If you buy a product, which on the label reads as you're clear to eat this product, and you react to the product, there's a good chance you're in the 30%. Mm-hmm. If you are eating a product regularly and one day start reacting to said product, you're probably in the 30% group. You were just getting clean batches and you didn't know it. And then you got a bad batch and then it hit you. If you go to someone's house and they prepare food for you using safe ingredients for you and you react, you're probably in the 30% group. Okay. Those are the general ways you would know if you're 30 versus 70. Different advice for both groups, by the way. That's why I had to define that up front. For the 70% group, you're learning how to read labels. You are maybe calling companies depending on the allergic issue. Okay. If you are in the top 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, depending on your country. Well, actually, depending on your country too. Do you know some countries, they don't even have to label stuff a certain way? That really kind of gets to me. Like, I'm mind blown. Like, I actually have a blacklist of countries I would never live in based on their food allergy practices.
Wow.
It's actually kind of crazy. I won't even consider visiting. I'm like, no, why would I do that?
You wouldn't be able to eat.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're in the 70% group, usually reading the label is enough. Okay. Let's say you're in the 30% group. You're finding a product, you're taking a picture of it on your phone, going home, and you're either going to email the company or call the company. And you're going to get all the details. You're going to ask about shared equipment, shared facility, processing aids, things that aren't on the label. We actually have resources on our website that actually take you through for an hour all the different scenarios of how to call a company and what kind of responses you might get, how to respond to them, etc. If a company gives you the runaround, you don't eat the food. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Right? If you can't get a straight answer, or if they tell you something like that's proprietary, politely tell them, well, this is my life and I'm not going to buy your product. And by the way, I'll make sure to let my friends know not to buy it either. Thanks. Okay. But be super nice about it. Don't be mean. And so if you're in the 30%, you're jumping through a lot of hoops before you even try the product. Now, for those who are super paranoid, you can do what I like to call the poison test. Think about what you would do if you were like stranded in the woods and you found some berries. Obviously, you're not supposed to eat them first, right? You're supposed to rub it on your skin, see how it works out, and then do the process. So you would do like a poison test and see if you can tolerate the food. If you pass the test, eat the food. You can start with a small amount and then increase the amount. If you're a complex case, you're going to do this for 7 days until you're eating like a double-sized portion by the end of the week. If you are completely still at neutral, you've passed, eat the food. And if at any point you failed, you stop the test, right? Mm-hmm. So it's different advice for both groups. How do you know if it's safe? You have 0 reactions. So before you're even trialing foods, you have to be at what we call neutral, which means nothing. You're clear mentally, you're clear physically, like your GI and restroom and sleep, all of it's clear. You're perfectly fine. That's neutral. That's the definition of neutral, right? Most people aren't, by the way. But you have to be either at neutral or as close as humanly possible to neutral. That's the only time you start trials. And you're keeping food journals. You're being very, very, very aware of what's going on. Not to the point where like you stress yourself out and give yourself a complex and induce like anxiety, which can then look like food allergy, but it's not. So it's a fine line. I'm really lucky, I suppose, in that I'm very detached from my diagnosis mentally. Like I kind of don't care. Like, oh, there's a reaction. Cool. Write it down. Move on. Whereas other people, they're just like freaking out and panicking over it. And I'm kind of like, been there, done that, got the shirt. I'm moving on. So if you can like sort of kind of give yourself a mental buffer, whatever that means to you, you need to, because it's really hard if you're freaking out all the time to really subjectively deal with this problem. Okay. So once you've determined what's safe, eat it, enjoy it, right? If you are in a severe boat, you know, sunflower, for example, which is a processing aid so much. Oh my goodness. Or coconut. My goodness. If you are coconut free and you try to eat healthfully, like every health food is like coconut oil, coconut oil, coconut oil, coconut oil, coconut. Like everything is coconut, you know? If you're dairy free, it's all coconut. If you're dairy free, nut free, and coconut free, woo, you're in trouble, right? It's all the things. So, it's making sure that you're getting food that's safe for you. And it's a process. You know, one of the resources that we have on Raise is we have what we call safe product guides, where we've already made thousands of phone calls. You know, it's still a guide. You still have to follow up because, you know, we can publish a guide today and then 6 months later, the answer is different. Yeah. So we always tell people that up front. But if you don't see a company here that you might have seen in the grocery store thinking that's safe, there's probably a reason it's not on our list, right? Mm-hmm. Because our list, I'm always catering to the 30. I have to say that up front. I don't cater. I mean, technically I cater to the 70 because I cater to the 30, but the 70 can eat way more than the 30.
Yeah.
But if I can feed the 30, I can feed everybody. And so that's who I cater to. So our lists revolve around free from equipment, right? So if I'm telling you it's safe for the 30, it's automatically safe for the 70, which is kind of cool. So that's, you know, I don't even want to say hard. It's just time consuming. You know how many phone calls I've had to make?
Yeah.
Do you know how many companies don't call me back? There's one company who I'm not going to name, but I might one day on social media. They've ignored all my phone calls and all my emails. I'm like, dude, just email me back and tell me, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
I can't.
That's awful. Okay. On that same line then, I would love if you have any companies that like stand out to you that are like, okay, this is an awesome company for like maybe the top 9, whatever,
Yeah, of
whatever you
course.
think. Do you have any companies where you're like, yeah, these are reliable that you found?
If you find yourself in my situation and can't drink water, go to Raw Water Summit Spring. Brian is the coolest dude ever, and he will help you out. Like, legit, get in touch. That's where you need to go. Because corn is in everything, including the processing of water, including municipal sources. And if you are like me and you can't have any form of water, including like, oh, so-and-so said this water filter. Nope. Guess what? There's corn in that filter too. So Raw Water Summit Spring has the only exemption in the United States to not treat the water. Believe it or not, every bottled water has been treated, even if it doesn't say it on the package. Wow. It has. So that's kind of a big deal. Now that I got that out of the way. Okay. Top companies. Zigo Foods. They make bars. They have a muesli. They have oats, which are purity protocol. And I think they have a couple other things, but top 9 for y'all, that sort of good stuff. Gluten-free Harvest. They do gluten-free purity protocol oats. They're also corn-free. Kind of a big deal. Now, 25% of people with celiac disease can't do oats. If you're in the 25, obviously you can't have oats. But if you're everybody else, they're the best oats you can get. Let's see. Partake Foods. They even have more. They used to only be cookies. Now they have like a pizza dough and a pancake mix and something else too. Oh, brownie mix. Kid Force swears by the brownies. She says the brownies are like thebomb.com. Blake's Seed Free makes a top 9 free Rice Krispie bar and top 9 free equipment. It's pretty bomb.com. I'm not going to lie. The kids don't like the seed bars, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy them. You should try them at least once. Our kids don't like them, but they will gobble up the Rice Krispie bars in a heartbeat. 88 Acres. They make a range of products now. They used to only be bars, but now they even have like salad dressings and marinades, and they have seed butters and all sorts of things. Sun Butter, 2 words, believe it or not. They make an organic, a non-organic, and a crunchy, and it's a peanut alternative, and it's top 9 free equipment. I'm trying to think of my favorite brands. The Honest Bison and North Star Bison for people who are severely allergic to corn, who need corn-free meat. The processing of meat also contains corn, so it's like a big deal to not have processed corny meat. With the Honest Bison, they'll only get the bison and the ground bite. Like, don't get anything seasoned. Just get like straight meat. And the same with North Star. You can't get anything seasoned. It has to just be straight meat. Spicely Organics, one of the top brands ever. Pretty much every other spice brand is using shared equipment with something within the top 8. And it's a corn-free brand. There's no anti-caking agents. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Celtic sea salt and Redmond salt for people who are corn allergic, because there's salt in corn. I know. Salted corn.
Redmond is our favorite in our house.
Yeah, great brand. Let me pull up my list. Hold on. Because there's more that I'm not thinking of that I know that I should be thinking of. And
No, I love this. It's going to be so helpful. I'm going to send everyone to your list too, so they can actually get the list for themselves. I'm like, okay, I've got to write all these down, and I'm going to link them.
See.
But
I'll
link your tops.
Favorites. Oh, No Way Chocolates. That's my top favorite. Like, okay, they make fake M&Ms, you guys. Dairy-free, top 8 free, sesame-free fake M&Ms. It is the coolest thing ever. That's because awesome. You can't make it at home. There are certain brands that I love because they make things commercially that you cannot make a hard-coated candy shell at home. Yeah. You need literally thousands of dollars worth of equipment. It's ridiculous. Nobody's going to do it. They did. It's so cool. And they make truffles too for people with food allergies. And it's top 9 free facility. Like, it's super cool. The Piping Gourmet, they're pretty cool. They make like whoopie pies, sold in freezer sections at some grocery stores. And I think those are my top picks for the day. Like, I mean, I could go on, but those are legitimate.
I love those. We will link those. We will link to your list. So you also mentioned kitchen tools, which is something I think that people don't think about a lot. So in terms of your food allergy kitchen, so you mentioned nonstick. So do you not use nonstick? What do you use instead? Like, what are your
so we actually
tools?
use nonstick. I know there's like a whole non-toxic living ban on nonstick, and I respect that. And one day I'll probably invest. But you guys, $100 for a pan, like, come on. I have to draw the line in the sand somewhere, you know? Like, I make ridiculous purchases all the time. I will admit that openly. I have a smoke gun. I have a professional whipped cream dispenser that was like $140, but I'm not spending $100 on one pan. Like, I don't know why either. That's the worst part. And I think actually I do know why, because certain types of nonsticks are pre-seasoned And then I have to do a bunch of research on what kind of oils they're using and all this other stuff, right? Whole bunch more hoops to jump through. And I'm a stickler. If it's not dishwasher safe or easily replaced, I don't buy it. Because our kids still make mistakes in the kitchen. Like I had to throw away a pan last year, or no, a pot. It was a good one too. I didn't want to, but I had to, because one of the kids thought they were cooking something that was safe, and it turns out it wasn't. And it was like non-malicious, but when that happens, I'm like, hey, it's not a big deal. And I throw it away. I move on, because not sick members, and I cannot afford to have that mental stressor and stuff. And okay, top kitchen tools. So it varies by diagnosis. I have to say that up front. And it also varies by family size. So for example, I oftentimes tell people get the commercial size KitchenAid, which costs more, and all the parts cost a little bit more, but it's better quality. Like for example, the regular ones, the enamel that they put on the stuff, it actually comes off over time, and then it's in your food, and that's super gross. Yeah. And I really get grossed out by it. Like sometimes I look at our small bowl thingy and I'm like, that's nasty. Somebody ate this at some point and I can't get past that. But with the commercial ones, it's all steel, right? Yeah. So you never have to worry about it. And so, but because it's bigger, you can double and triple batch, which means you can fill your freezer faster, which means easier free from living. That's why I recommend the larger one. So definitely a KitchenAid, especially if you're into baking. If you are any combination of dairy, nut, or corn free, and in some cases legume as well, and you can't do shared equipment, you must get a Nutrimilk. It's got to be at the top of your list, because you need to make milk at home safely. And then I would say a Vitamix. Do not skimp on your blender, because you're going to want to be able to make things that require power. Depending on your diagnosis, a food processor would be next. And then from there, it starts to branch out. Obviously, everybody's got to have pots and pans and different things like that. Stainless steel and glass, you usually don't have to replace unless it's really scratched. If it's heavily scratched, toss it out, start over. If it's not, you can keep using it. If nothing else, you can give it to people who don't have the food allergies. Like if you were like us and you have like the separate cooking stations, you could put it in the other cooking station and replace it. And we've done that. I'm just looking around my kitchen. Obviously, every spice you can imagine. What's funny is there's this spice rack here, and that holds, let's see, that holds 20, but then this entire cabinet right here, also completely full of spices. Yes. There's 3 levels of spices. This cabinet here, 2 more level of different spices. And then this cabinet here holds all of our vinegars and acids. So like this entire section, I know everybody listening can't see this, but you can see. Yes. And it's all literally this entire L thingy behind me, all spices and flavoring agents. I tell people, the reason you don't like your food is either you're undersalting or you're underflavoring, right? We can get you to like your food that's safe, and it can be delicious. You just roll with me, right? If you love ice cream, you have to get an ice cream machine with the compressor. Okay. This is so important. And go to icecreamscience.com, read the review on the top 3, and then pick one. I happen to have one of them. I love it. And I almost bought originally I had it picked between that one and then another one that happened to be one of the top 3. And I was like, cool, my top picks were there. I fell prey to Amazon fake reviews, like when it was still a new thing and nobody was talking about it. And my first one with a compressor was expensive, and it broke within the first 30 days. And then we couldn't return it. And then it doesn't work on hot days. And I'm like, what's the point? You piece of hunk of junk. So one day I got so fed up that I bought another one. They're expensive, you guys, $300 to $400. They're worth every penny.
But for ice cream.
Yeah. So here's the thing though. I love ice cream. And it's one of the few things I can make for myself safely. I love ice cream. Can I say that again? I love ice cream. So like I have a tool for making ice cream. And that's kind of the overarching advice here, is that you're going to focus on the tools that can create foods you love first and foremost. So if ice cream is your jam, that's at the top of your list, an ice cream machine with the compressor. Don't forget I said that part. It's so important. If baking is your jam, the KitchenAid is your priority. If you love smoothies every single day, the Vitamix is your priority, right? So it just really depends on your needs and preferences. But eventually what you're going to end up with is a kitchen that's fully kitted out with everything that you could ever want. I mean, because we do recipe development, I'm sure we have tools that the average household doesn't have. Like we have a deep fryer with oil filtration. It's actually not even that expensive. It was like $100. I mean, you'd expect it to be more. But no, it's a great deep fryer, and it's got a filtering system so that you can keep reusing the oil. Because that's always the biggest thing about deep fryers. People hate the oil waste. Well, you don't have to waste it anymore. We've got like a dehydrator, and I'm embarrassed to say we have 3 KitchenAids. One was a gift though. I have to always throw that in there. One was a gift. We have the Nutrimilk. We have an advanced water filter. We've got 2 refrigerators, 2 giant freezers, a double oven, a giant induction stove, every tool. We've literally got like 100 cooking tools that sit on the countertop, like double the normal amount of knives, at least 50 measuring spoons, and I'm not even exaggerating. An air fryer, a deep fryer, a food processor, a spice grinder. We've got it all, and the thing is, though, with that comes really delicious food.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Like, for me, I see it as an investment to quality of life. Sure, I could feed my kids beans, rice, and frozen vegetables every day. I really could, because that's the greatest common denominator. But number one, now I'm skipping out on vital nutrition because I've eliminated a lot of food groups. But number 2, what's the quality of life? Especially when you're dealing with kids. Earlier I had said, let's stick to like the little kid part of it. When your kids are little, they're going to class parties and sleepovers, or you want them to, and you want them to feel normal. How do you do that? You create an illusion. You're going to spend the day from diagnosis to probably like age 18 creating an illusion for your child.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work, like a lot. Been there, done that 4 times. Oh my goodness, you guys. It's so much work.
Yeah.
But you don't okay, because I'm just going to be real honest with all you parents listening. Do I regret it? No. Am I exhausted? Yes. Like that's the key here. And I resent my exhaustion, but I don't resent the things I did for them.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to explain, to the point now where I'm like, I don't care what you want. I'm buying a Lego set because I want one. Like, you're old enough, deal with it yourself, right? Like, I've given them all the tools. I mean, heck, we made an entire website with over 1,000 resources. Like, children, you're settled. I've taught you how to do everything. You don't need, our youngest at this point is almost 18, right? Like, they don't need me to baby them. So I'm kind of in that free zone where I'm like, no, make your own food now. Recipes on Raise. Go look it up. You have an account. Why do you need me? Go use what's in the fridge. I'm buying a Lego set, and that's kind of my thing. And you will get to that point. Like, that's the glimmer of hope I want to give you, is that it's not forever, right? I mean, for some of you, if you have, a disabled child, maybe it is forever. But for a lot of you, it's not forever. So it's investing your time and your energy into teaching them how to thrive, so that when they are old enough, they can thrive and you can kick back and relax.
I think that's so important too.
Your goal needs to be, they need to be independent. Even if they live at home. Like, I am not against adult children living at home. I think it's fine. I think the idea of rushing out to pay rent, I think it's kind of stupid. It's cheaper to live at home and you can pay rent at home and then everybody wins, right? But they also need to know how to contribute and how to fend for themselves, and something I actually do with our kids when they are adults and they have jobs, because I'm big into that. Like, you are not going to be a freeloader. I make, so we have a local place that does grocery delivery and that carries a lot of safe brands for us. I make them start their own account, and for like a 2-week period, and I kind of do it sporadically, they're actually completely on their own for food. 100%. They don't have to cook for the whole family. They just have to take care of themselves, but I make them completely work for themselves. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert, snacks, whatever. And they have to grocery shop for themselves, meal plan, cook, the whole 9. Because I need them to know how to do these skills, because at least if they're doing it while they're at home, they can say to me, I don't know how to do such and such. But if I wait until they're gone, it's like, how much harder is that for them? And so that's really what it is. It's all a bunch of training. It's just teaching them how to do stuff for themselves. And the other tool I want to tell you, this one right here, the instant read thermometer. I think every house should have one. It makes your cooking way easier.
Yes.
Like, I know professional chefs are all about the touch and the look and the feel. And I'm like, nah, just get the thermometer.
Yeah.
Like, so much easier.
Oh, I love that. And these are all things you can pass on to your kids, and the listeners can pass on to their kids too. Like, okay, this is the equipment that we use. These are the ingredients that we use. And eventually, they have that independence. They can go and they can do that their own. Even my 8-year-old at this point, what was it, yesterday? She's like, can I cook dinner? I'm like, sweet offer, not tonight, because I already have a plan, and, and we'd have to go to the grocery store and all that. But she's like, well, when can I cook dinner then? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, Thursday. Thursday, you can cook dinner on Thursday. And she was like, okay, I'll cook dinner on Thursday.
You got to send me pictures. I want to see what she makes.
I'll post them. I'll post them on social media. And
okay. That's so cute.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
She is so cute. She is already really falling in love with being in the kitchen at 8. And I appreciate that too. Because I think the more and more, especially the more she starts to connect her food sensitivity with the way she feels, the less she feels left out with like other kids. And the more she's like, no, I want to feel good. I don't like feeling like this. And it was interesting. It's, we're recording this much earlier than this is going to come out, but it's almost Valentine's Day right now. And, so I was at Target with my younger kiddo shopping for her Valentine's. And I'm like, oh, we've got to get something for big sister. She was at school. And I'm like, do I just get the regular candy for her to give out to her classmates and be like, well, you can't have this? Or do I get the one that I know that she can have that costs about $1 million, but I know she can have it. And then she can have one with her friends too. So I'm texting my husband and my husband's like, spend the $1 million, because then she's like, well, I can have one of these too. And her friends are going to give her all of these treats that she can't have. So you might as well give her something she can have. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right.
and you know, you've accurately described it. That is exactly what food allergy life is like when you have younger children. I can tell you guys listening, when they get older, it does go down in price because you don't have to work so hard at the illusion, and they get to the point where they kind of don't care as much.
Yeah.
You know, and in high school, they're not doing class parties for Valentine's Day and exchanging candies, right? It's a totally different landscape. Now they are going out to eat at restaurants, and you still have to be prepared for all of that. It's a different landscape, but it's not the same. And so, you know, when they're younger, though, you're going to spend the $1 million. And I promise you this, I can promise you, I can look back and say, we spent the $1 million. We actually tallied it up one year. We spent $32,000 one year on food. Wow. And that's a car with a moonroof. Like, it's a really nice car. Yes. Right? I guarantee you, we have spent $500,000 on these kids just in food alone.
Yeah.
I don't regret it. They had every experience. They had giant birthday cakes. They had parties with friends. We were the party house for a while. We literally had like ice cream parties, and you know, we did it all. The kids were included. I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, I did my part as a parent to make sure my kid didn't feel left out. Now, is it a perfect system? No. In fact, one of our kids, I asked one day, I said, did you ever feel left out? And they said, I know you did everything to make me feel included, but sometimes I did. And I was like, wow, because I did a lot. Yeah. You know?
Yeah,
and to know that child still felt left out, I'm like, geez, Louisa, how much would I have had to do to keep you involved, you know, knowing what I had done? Yeah. And so, because there's some things you just can't avoid, you know, with certain allergy sets. You can't avoid bringing your own food to a restaurant for some people. And I think that's really the key. Like, I think that's really when they felt left out, because they always had to bring stuff. Yeah. And so, you know, you can only do so much, but you will not look back on it when your kids are adults and say, oh, I regret buying that candy. Like, you're not. I promise. Yeah. You might sort of regret it in the moment where you're like, man, they ate that candy so fast and I spent so much money on it. Like, you will say that. Yes. I say that all the time. Yeah. But I don't like legit regret it later. Like, I just don't. Because when you see that little look on their face and they light up, and, you know, we've got one kid and he's not a child and his face still lights up. And I'm like, hey, look at this thing I got for you. And he's like, oh, I'm like, dude, it never gets old. Yes. It never gets old.
Well, it's funny. My husband still has foods that like silly foods, like the cereal that he ate when he was a kid that he gets so excited about because he doesn't really have it anymore. And I'm like, this is like the most basic food ever. Right. But he's like, but I could have this and I couldn't have all the other ones. So this is exciting to me because I remember that this is something that I can have and this is something enjoyable. And it's funny. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, most people take food for granted until they lose it. Then all of a sudden they realize what's up. Yeah. It creates a whole new level of understanding.
It's true. It's so true. Okay. I have a couple last questions. I don't want to keep you all day, but I also do. I could definitely talk to you for hours. Do you have I know that your family is a great example of having several different food allergies, but do you have any go-to allergy friendly meals for families, or like just tips? I know you already gave the spice tip, which I 100%, you know, making sure you're salting your food and using lots of spices to make it flavorful. Maybe tips for making food more flavorful. So maybe go-to meals or just tips for making allergy.
Oh man, this is a tough one. And I'll tell you why. Everybody's got an opinion on food, right? Like, one person loves pasta, the next person hates it. And so I guess the advice is really, it's kind of weird, but cook what you love. Whatever food you actually like, focus on adapting that for safety. That's the real advice, because I don't know what you listening to. I don't know what you love. Maybe you love Indian food and you can't have legumes. Hot dog, is that hard, right? Because Indian food is packed with legumes. And so now you have to focus on creating flavors that are legume free and still within the Indian realm of food. Or maybe you love Mexican food and you're allergic to tomatoes. That's really hard. Okay.
That's my sister.
Because Mexican food is built on the backbone of tomatoes.
Yeah.
And so maybe now you've got to reinvent so many wheels to get back to the mouthfeel of a tomato. And then you got to trick your brain by using certain spices to think it's the color of a tomato, but you'll never get the taste of a tomato. There's nothing really that gets you close to a tomato. You can bring in other Mexican flavors, but you'll never get tomato. Okay. Now, maybe you can have tomatillos, but even though they're close related to tomato, maybe you can still do that, in which case you get close. But even then, it's not the same. Although you could try gooseberry. Gooseberry might get you closer to a tomato, believe it or not. You'll get a better mouthfeel. You're going to have to mask the flavor a lot. You're going to have to work on it, but it is adaptable. Especially if you do fruit salsas too, you bring in mango and red onion. Okay, that's a whole different story for a whole different day.
Oh, well, I'm going to use that for my sister because she's allergic to tomatoes. So that's a great suggestion. I love
that.
There
you go. Mexican food without tomato. Or maybe you love, traditional Chinese food and you can't have fish and mushroom. Geez, Louisa, that's hard. So I can't really give one meal per se, but the best advice is just cook what you love safely. If you can find ways to adapt, that's really the goal. And that's the crazy thing about Raise. I've wanted to go on competition cooking shows for a while now, just to shove it in people's faces to be like, look what Free From can do, right? And on so many shows, they want you to have a signature dish. And I'm like, I don't have one. I legitimately don't have a signature dish, because my signature is throwing everything on its head. My signature is tell me what you wish you had, and then I'll get you there. Tell me what you can't have and watch me reinvent all these wheels. That's my signature, right? I don't stick to one thing. That's boring. And then you're just doing the same thing again and again. Who wants to do that all day? I know I don't. If I were not blessed with the miracle of cooking, which is literally what it was, I would not do this job. If I had to because I talk to I have friends who are in the industry and I had to test this recipe 9 times. I'm like, what? I could not. For me, I literally get it right the first time, 99% of the time. If I didn't, I'd literally walk away, because I don't have that patience to keep redoing the same thing. I really don't.
Yeah. I'm very similar. I don't have a lot of patience.
And so I am so in a weird boat that I'm just Beethoven and I'm just going to do my thing. But that's my signature, is getting you to a place you thought you could never get to. Top 9 free cake that tastes good and it's not a brick and it's moist and it's delicious and it frees well and you can keep it for 4 months. I'm there. Did it, done it, invented it, moved on, right? A cake with 18 layers that's literally 4 feet tall, did it. Completely free from. Cool. Moving on. To me, I'm all about, let me stop the show, right? Let me reinvent. So who knows? Maybe I'll never go on one of those shows, but maybe I will.
Maybe you need your own show. You need your own cooking
Actually,
show.
It's funny. We filmed a pilot on our own, and now we're actually in the editing process. And if anyone listening wants to produce a TV show, please get in touch.
I wish I knew someone who could do that. That's so, right? Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I'm out of my depth on this one. I have one friend in the industry and they're like, yeah, I don't know. And so it's okay, I'm just going to work this one out on my own. But if I could get a cooking show, and I want to show people you can have your cake and eat it too. And I want to show kids, especially, I don't care what your restriction is. You can do anything. If you want to be an astronaut with food allergies, you can do it. You can make your own freeze-dried, space-aged food and have it and literally go to space with it. There is nothing stopping you but you. That's it. You can do it. You can do anything.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh. Okay. Tell us more about Raise then, your allergy-friendly recipe platform. Tell us about it, because I know that the person listening is I've heard you mention it a couple of times. How do I get in on this?
So the coolest thing about Raise, and this is actually true of our bakery as well, both of them almost did not exist, because I, being the person that I am and with the background that I have, right? I'm well, from a marketing standpoint, it needs a name that's catchy, that resonates with people, blah, blah, blah. And so when we first started our bakery, I was we can't do this. And they were like, well, why? And I said, well, because we'd have to call the bakery gluten-free, dairy-free. And I had all like this, it was literally like 100 words long by the time I was done. And then I said bakery at the end. I'm like, nobody's going to type that into a search box or a URL. Like, that's ridiculous. And they're like, okay, give it to me again. So I have to go through the list. And they said, okay, free and friendly foods. I'm like, okay, free from, friendly to, I'm on. Now we can have a bakery. And the same thing happened with Ray's, because I said, if you make it about food allergy, you're eliminating all these other people. Someone with celiac disease doesn't think food allergy. Someone who's vegan does not think food allergy, right? They're thinking the buzzword. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not doing this if I can't include everyone, because that was my goal. And so Ray's actually stands for restricted diet. The A is for allergy. The I is for intolerance. The S is for special diet. That was my compromise, because that actually stands for paleo GAPS, AIPSCD, vegan, etc. And then the E is for EOE. When you combine those 5 letters, and of course the extension of the S, get everybody. Literally everyone is included. And that was so Ray's includes everyone. And the advanced recipe search is the coolest thing ever. Like I said, 85 filters plus. So cool. And it filters all the majors, obviously, but all the minors that people are excluding. So cinnamon, carrots, celery, citrus, corn, cruciferous, mustard, seeds, all seeds, like anything and everything. Like we're doing it because nobody else is, right? Yeah. And what's cool is it's an and search, not an or search. With some searches, if the recipe meets one or another of your needs, you see the results. Ours has to be all needs are met to show the result, which is so cool. And then of course you can bookmark your results, and because it's dynamically loaded every time you go back, if there's a new recipe that meets your need, you can see it. And so what I always tell people is go through like at first and set up a bunch of bookmarks for yourself. So like everyone in our household for dinner, everyone in our household for breakfast. And then maybe it's just kid 2 and kid 3 for breakfast, right? Like make all these bookmarks so you can quickly get to search result groupings, right? It's actually pretty cool. And then there's like a favorite feature. So you have your own little recipe box and, and that's just the recipes. Then we have the other half of the website that's all resources. It's videos. We have a whole library of like courses and seminars and teaching you all the things that, when you get the diagnosis, they're just not telling you, right? Yeah. And they're not like maliciously not telling you. Like, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. It's just not what they do. And that's okay, right? This is our specialty, taking you from diagnosis to thriving, getting your kids in school, getting your kids involved, getting you to a sleepover, eating out at a restaurant, or just knowing how to handle taking your own food to a restaurant. It's, should your child be in preschool? It's how to communicate. It's all the things that nobody's talking about. That's what Ray's is. It's everything you wish you knew the day you were diagnosed. It's the way that I literally take everything in my brain and give it to you. That's what it is. It's so my brain on display.
Oh, I love that. And I think oftentimes when you get that diagnosis or that confirmation of diagnosis or whatever it is, it's like, here are the things you can't eat. And you can go and you can look for a list of all of the ingredients that have that food. I'm thinking of corn in my head and all of the like ingredients that spin through my head whenever I look at a food label. Or you can go, okay, these foods are safe, whatever. But no one teaches you how to cook to make those foods. No one teaches you, how to go out to eat. And so I think it's such a fantastic resource because
we even have
they really basic, don't give it.
Yeah, we even have like basic cooking videos, because one day I was like, what if somebody got the diagnosis and they're so used to eating out, they literally don't know how to cook. And so we started doing like how to chop an onion, how to cut a bell pepper, how to chiffonade vegetables, how to do like literally how to do the most basic tasks. Yeah. Right. Because for some of the people, it's like they want to teach their kids as well. Right. And so you can go through the super basic stuff with kids. And, what's interesting is, and we sort of set out to do this, and I think we've more than achieved it. We are actually the leading online resource for corn allergy anywhere. Awesome. And we don't play the game of corn light, corn moderate, and all that stuff. No, we're like hard, severe corn allergy, all elimination, no derivatives. We take the 1% and we feed them. So we feed everybody in the corn-free realm. And, if you're listening and you think you have a corn allergy, don't join any groups online. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but just know some of those online groups put out really bad information and they're not well moderated. Yeah. And it's interesting.
It's true with a lot of
people,
different allergies too, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But corn is one of the worst because there's so many different levels of tolerance. And so one person will be like, oh yeah, eat this food, it's safe. And it's like, hold on, that's processed on shared equipment with corn. And you're telling them to go out and eat it. Like, hard pass, man. You're going to kill someone's kid, you know? And it's funny because, well, it's not funny, but people have asked me so many times to start a Facebook group. And I'm like, no, you can't moderate them properly. Or else then I'm going to look like a jerk, always having to shut people's conversations down. Like, no. And then somebody else was like, well, they're just going to go somewhere else and talk about it. I'm like, cool, then the liability's not on me, but I'm not taking on that.
Yeah, you want to keep people safe. Yeah,
exactly. It's the same reason why on Raise, members can't communicate with each other. We don't want anyone to inadvertently give you bad advice. We vet
so smart.
everything. We vet it because that's what you're, you know, when you become a member, you're buying safety first and foremost. I mean, you're buying like delicious recipes too, but safety is what you're really buying. It was the same thing with our bakery. You know, we had some customers who would come to us and say, can you make me a character cake with such and such? And I have to say, listen, I have to say this up front to you. We are problem solvers first, cake artists second. Solve the problem. The problem was this product did not exist. It exists now. I cannot give you the character. I'm sorry. But you can get a cake topper. And it'll look cool.
That's what I was thinking.
Get your colors kind of close, but we have to use all natural colors and they're allergy friendly. And I can't get you this shade of blue, but I'll get you a blue. And you're just going to pretend it looks cool. And that's how your cake's going to work, you know? And that's what it's like. And so, you know, I tell people like, you know, you can't do certain things. And at the same time, you can do it all. Like, there are only a few things that you will ever hear me say you cannot do. Egg-free souffle, it's off the menu. Please don't even try, you know? But pretty much everything else, I'm going to get you there. We're going to get close. Or what I like to call the memory of, you know?
Yes.
One of the coolest recipes on Raise, it's top 8 free, soy-free chicken chow mein. And the kid said it's better than restaurant chicken chow mein. And I was like, what?
That's awesome.
Restaurant chicken chow mein, this is great. And I actually call it the memories of chicken chow mein because it's the wrong noodle. We have to use a ramen noodle, right? Because you can't get the right noodle that's top 8 free, you know, and obviously there's no soy. But boy, oh boy, did we take you back to that memory of chicken chow mein. And that's really what it's all about. It's just, it's creating these experiences for you. And, you know, we get so many messages these days where people are just like, I can feed my kids safely. Thank you. And it's like, cool. That's really cool.
That's really cool. Oh, I love it. Okay. I have some fun little rapid fire questions we love to do at the very end. And I'm really curious what your answers because some of them involve food. So we'll see. But before I get to that, I never want to forget to ask you where, other than Raise, where can my listeners connect with you, the work you do? Where can they find you?
Yeah. The easiest way is theallergychef.com. That's me. Hopefully you don't forget who I was this whole time. But if you go to theallergychef.com, it's like a giant landing page and it takes you to like the Instagram and the YouTube and the, you know, all the places and all the things. If you go to theallergychef.com and you're newly diagnosed, we actually have a whole free program for the newly diagnosed. You click on a button. It says, are you newly diagnosed? Click here. And you click there and you can sign up and you get like a top 9 free meal plan. And there's a webinar, which we're actually converting into an e-course so that people can do it all at once. And we send you all the resources so that you go from day one, within a week, you've got so much information in your head that can get you to the next step. And again, that's a whole free program. Instagram is the social media platform that we're active on because that's the only one that I can really wrap my brain around. And it's at The Allergy Chef. So again, The Allergy Chef. If you remember nothing else, just The Allergy Chef. And you'll find us.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. And your Instagram's awesome. There are so many great resources just on your Instagram too. But yeah, so I'm sure they will go and they will, especially the resources for the newly diagnosed. I'm like, I want to go back on and follow it all.
Well,
even
you know, it's
though,
crazy.
Like,
I'm actually
far beyond that.
As part of converting it to an e-course, I'm finally finishing a project I started like over a year ago. And it started off as a joke, not joke, with a friend in the community. They had started a bakery in Colorado. And she says, you know, when our kid was diagnosed with a seed allergy, nobody told us what that meant. And I'm like, what do you mean? Didn't they tell you what to avoid? And she goes, no. And I'm like, this is so dumb. You know what we need? We need a manual with every allergen and what to do. And she's like, that'd be so cool if there was a manual that they gave out. And then I said, I'm going to write one. And I really did. I literally have this like 80-page manual on my computer that goes through all the majors, truckload of less commons. It talks about like how to avoid hidden sources. It's got links to more resources and all these things. And it's like, there's a manual coming. A manual
That's
that
awesome.
literally does not exist. Even like the major organizations with loads of funding, nobody's produced a manual. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why has it taken so long? But you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm going to change the world.
Yes.
Give it some time. Just going to
I love it. I love it. You are changing the world. This is so important and so helpful. This has been so incredible. But I think we have to get to the rapid fires.
Okay. Rapid fires. Here we go.
I know that you can't do most water. So do you do coffee or tea?
No.
Okay. Podcast or book?
What? Say that one more time.
Podcast or book?
Neither. I mean, I like to read. Okay. Book, but digital books because I can't touch books. And I'm
That
not
counts.
really like, I don't do the podcast thing. I don't know why. It never really like took root in me at all, which is funny.
Some people are either or.
Yeah. Which is funny because I'm working on a creative writing project that eventually I'm actually going to do as a podcast. And I wish I could tell you more, but just know that it's going to be really good and incredibly funny and also really good. Like it's so like
I'll look out for it.
Everybody I've told, they're like, oh man, this is genius. I'm like, right? This is like the best idea ever. But yeah.
I love it. Okay. So what did you eat for breakfast this morning with all of your allergies?
Nothing. I actually don't eat breakfast. I usually eat like once a day. Funny thing is I sort of forgot to eat yesterday. So after we finish up, I'll probably go eat like some meat that I have in the refrigerator. Yeah.
Hey, whatever works, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you can eat out at restaurants, but what's your first choice if you're going to order out, if you're going to go to a restaurant?
So I cannot, but I am a foodie at heart. So anything with a Michelin star, I'm in. And I have yet. Well, okay. So Carlton actually agreed to this because he's like $300 for a dinner, and I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, this is so dumb. And I'm like, I don't care what you think. You're going to take me there, and you're going to eat the food and describe it to me. So
I love that.
But then like all the lockdown started and stuff. So
oh yeah.
But that's my, like, I'm really into Michelin stars. I don't even know why. Like, even before I was diagnosed, I was actually, when I was younger, I would save up money to go to Michelin starred restaurants just to be like, and it's like my thing.
I mean, I'm a huge foodie too, so I get it. Do you have like a number one on your list that you want to try?
No,
right now?
I don't care. I want the experience. Like it could be anywhere, honestly.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Neither, because I sleep at weird hours. So sometimes I'm up early and sometimes like I'm like the worst person to ask these questions.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. Well, last but not least, because this is the Healthy Balance Mama podcast and we're about helping moms find balance in every area. What does balance mean to you in this season?
Right now for me, it's delegation. I have, oh my goodness. I tell my kids this all the time. I don't want to parent adults. You are 18. One of them is like pushing. Wait, did he just turn 19? I think he just turned 19. Anyways, you get the idea. I'm like, don't make me parent you. Do your freaking chores. You know what your job is. Just do it. Why do I have to say anything? When you go to work, does your boss have to say anything? Well, no. Then why do I? Right? Like, it's delegating. It's putting the responsibility where it belongs. That's always been our parenting style. Is it's all about responsibility and getting them to take it. And so balance to me is just I no longer have to do it myself because they're old enough to do it. And it's getting them to do it or letting them do it or whatever. And so that I can just not do it or do something else or, like
you've done it for so long.
Exactly. Like I legitimately have not had balance for their entire lives. And so, and I realize right now the pendulum is swinging to an extreme where some days I just kind of like want to sit around and do nothing for like 5 hours. And then I feel guilty for doing nothing for too long. But then it's like, I did so much for so long. It's okay. It's
self-care. You're allowed.
Like, it's okay. But yeah, that's what it's like. It's getting somebody else to do it.
I love that. So for those of us who still have young kids and we're like, one day they'll do things for themselves.
We have some friends that had kids that were like 15 and then they had like 3 more kids. I'm like, what?
Oh, that would be really hard.
I'm like, you were at the finish line. What were you thinking? Like,
oh, it's so hard. We're finally at the point where we're like, there's no more diapers. Like the youngest is 4, so she's old enough to, we can talk to her, we can reason, she can set the table for dinner. We're getting there.
Like, every so often, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun? Like, I'm like, wouldn't it be fun to have a baby? And I think about it for 5 minutes. I'm like, never mind. Forget that I said that. That was a terrible idea. I think
You've been through that season.
I just want to borrow someone's baby for 5 minutes. That's it. That's actually all I really wanted. I tell
I'm sure you could do that. I'm sure you can.
Like, babies are cute for 5 minutes and then they cry, or you have to change a diaper, or you have to be responsible. There's all this stuff that nobody talks about. They just talk about how cute they are. But there's a lot going on there. It's not just the cuteness,
It's true. Oh my gosh, I love it. Kathlena, this was such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for making me laugh while talking about food allergies and anaphylaxis, and for the incredible resources that you've created for the food allergy community. I appreciate you. I know my listeners are going to appreciate you. And if they don't already know who you are, I hope that they hop into everything that you have, because it's so important.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And just trying to help people help themselves, I guess, really.
You're doing it.
Thank you for listening to my podcast.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Healthy Balance Mama podcast. If you loved it, would you take a screenshot and share it with a friend over on Instagram and tag me in it? It helps me so much to know what you love and are taking away from each episode. If you really loved it, would you hop over to iTunes and give me a star rating and review? Every rating and review helps this podcast be seen and heard by more women who need to hear the message of balance and wellness without deprivation. It's the best free gift you could give me. And as a reminder, the information and opinions on this podcast are meant for education and inspiration only, and are not to be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult with a trusted practitioner before making any changes. Have a beautiful day, friend, and I'll see you in the next episode.